A month ago, I told you the EU voted to keep alive a rule letting tech companies voluntarily scan your private messages, your emails, your photos, no warrant, no suspicion required. It survived a vote to kill it by falling short of the threshold needed to block it, not by winning a majority because of the summer holiday break. The US Senate advanced a similar package of bills last week. Not passed into law yet, advanced, which means it's still moving. Here is the part that matters most. Once that kind of infrastructure gets built, it rarely gets dismantled again. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how this plays out, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, and why the same justification keeps appearing everywhere. Protect the children every single time. And I actually don't agree with that because it isn't about children. And in fact, it is very dangerous to open up these security flaws within applications for the very reason that it can damage abuse. It can cause problems in abusive relationships, and it can also get whistleblowers and reporters actually in big trouble. So look, let's start with Europe, because there are actually two things people lump together under chat control, and the difference matters. The version that survived on the 9th of July is voluntary and only touches unencrypted messages. But there's a second, far bigger proposal working through Brussels right now, the permanent version, sometimes called Chat Control 2.0. That one would not be voluntary. It would require scanning before your messages even get encrypted directly on your device, which security researchers say defeats encryption entirely, even on apps that claim to be fully private. That version has not yet passed. It collapsed in negotiations in June, and the next attempt to revive it comes in September. So the fight is not over. It has just moved to another date. And here is why Europe's own regulator is uneasy about it. In February 2025, the European Data Protection Board, chaired by Anu Talus, issued a formal statement warning that age verification and child safety measures create a different collision with the EU's own data protection law, their own rule. Article 5 of the GDPR says companies should collect minimum data necessary. So verifying someone's identity does the opposite. It maximizes what the company holds on you. The regulator's own words were that this should not enable further targeting or profiling of users, which means even the people who wrote Europe's privacy law are on record saying this creates the exact risk we are talking about. Now, to America. On the 5th of August, the Senate Commerce Committee, chaired by Ted Cruz, advanced 4 bills in a single session. Advanced, not passed. They still need a full Senate vote, and then the House. The centerpiece is the Kids Online Safety Act. Its core mechanism is called a duty of care. Platforms must take reasonable steps to prevent harm to minors, covering things like anxiety, eating disorders, and compulsive use. Okay, sounds reasonable until you see the mechanism it forces. If a platform can be sued the moment a minor is harmed, the only way to avoid the liability is to know for certain the exact age of every single user, not most users, every user. The Center for Democracy and Technology wrote directly to the committee stating the duty of care provision is likely unconstitutional and inherently incentivizes age verification that risks everyone's privacy. The Electronic Frontier Foundation went further, calling it a bill that will suppress lawful, important speech for everyone, not just kids. Alongside KOSA, the committee advanced the Youth AI Privacy Act from Senator Ed Markey, requiring AI chatbot companies to gate access by age. The Chatbot Act from Senator Cruz himself requires family accounts and parental consent before a teenager can even open an AI chatbot, which in practice means proving the family relationship and both people's ages to the platform. Here is where it becomes real, not theoretical. To meet requirements like these, platforms are outsourcing identity checks to private verification companies. Yachty in the UK working with Meta, Spotify and TikTok charging up to 42 cents per check. Persona in the US working with Reddit and X, and KID in Singapore working with Snapchat, Twitch, Discord. These companies now hold huge centralized databases of government ID photos and face scans. And centralized databases get breached. In October last year, a vendor called 5CA, which handled age verification appeals for Discord, was hacked. Roughly 70,000 government ID photos were exposed. 4 days later, a class action lawsuit, Usita versus Discord, was filed in the Californian federal court. That case is real. I checked the actual court filing myself. It's still open. And as the most recent record, no settlement has been reached. This is not a hypothetical risk I'm describing to you. It already happened to real people whose passports and driving licenses are now sitting in a database that got broken into. Quick pause. If you want stories like this broken down every week before they hit the headlines, subscribe to my Substack. Links in the description. raw.natschooler.com. Right, back to it. Now, the UK has already gone further than either the US or the EU has so far. Ofcom, the regulator, published its official register of categorized services in July. 11 platforms are named directly: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, Snapchat, WhatsApp, X, Pinterest, Quora, and Roblox. Every one of them is now legally required to assess the risk of users encountering certain content and to offer tools that mean verifying who is and who is not an adult. On top of that, back in June, the UK government announced plans for an outright ban on social media for under 16s. And here is a detail that shows exactly how blunt these rules are. Wikipedia was nearly caught in the same net. The Wikimedia Foundation had to formally challenge the UK regulations in court, arguing that applying these identity and age verification duties to an open volunteer-run encyclopedia would destroy how it works. They lost that specific legal challenge, but Ofcom ultimately placed Wikipedia out on a lower tier watch list rather than the strictest category for now. The foundation has said publicly that the threat has not gone away and only paused. So there is the pattern. Europe keeps a voluntary scanning regime alive and has a much bigger mandatory version waiting for you in the wings, whilst its own regulator warns, it conflicts with its own privacy law. America is building the same requirement through 4 bills still working their way through Congress, backed by an industry of private verification companies who've already been breached once. Britain has gone furthest of all, naming these 11 platforms by law, and as I said, nearly forcing the same rules onto Wikipedia itself. So look, I want to show you why this pattern should worry you, even if you think you've got nothing to hide. Look at what happened with license plate cameras in American towns. They were sold to local councils as a narrow tool, purely for catching stolen cars and finding missing people. Once installed, town after town discovered the same camera data was being shared with federal agencies. Nobody in that town had approved. People in Evanston covered their own town's cameras in plastic bags to physically disable them. Councils in Oshkosh, Santa Cruz, and Mountain View tore up their contracts entirely once they found out. That is what happens when a surveillance tool built for one narrow reason gets repurposed for something else entirely. And that tool took real organizing effort, town by town, to undo, even at a small physical scale. Now, Imagine that same pattern not on a street corner, but built into every major app on your phone across three jurisdictions at once. Get the real story. Subscribe to Monday Influencer. The link is in the description. Thank you.